they could expect, to see somebody who's playing the instrument and singing, that's as hot as me, that looks as good. So,
and as humble as you.
Yeah, exactly.
The OHP Uncut Podcast with Kannon.
How are you, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm chilling.
Look at you. Look at you with the full frontal nudity.
Yes. Exactly.
What inspired that day in the bathroom mirror?
I feel like, I never really show my body like that. And I was like, there's so many dudes always shirtless and stuff. And I was like, I want to kind of, try one out.
You were feeling yourself. You're like, you know what? Today is the day I'm going to drop one.
Yeah, I was like, and I'm promoting the album. And I'm like, what's better promo than sex? Sex sells.
Nothing. Here's what I want to know. Who got the unedited version of it? Because I know
Nobody.
that someone got it.
Nobody.
I'm going to accept that answer, but I'm not going to believe it. Well, thank you for your time today, man. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on a song that is just absolutely blown up, man, and become like one of the songs of the summer. I mean, that's insane how fast a song can connect with people, isn't it?
Seriously. It's a blessing, man.
So you've been doing all this for a minute, man. I heard that you got started. You wanted to learn to play the guitar because of Guitar Hero. Is that real?
Yeah, that's real.
What songs were you crushing on Guitar Hero?
I mean, I think that was Legends of Rock. So it was like, I would just play it at my friend's house until I got my own. But at Miles' house, we would play Legends of Rock, and I was super passionate about it. What songs? They had like Sunshine of Your Love on that one, and like Barracuda, Cliffs of Dover. That one really pushed something in me. It was so hard, but I absolutely had to get it though. I'm like, I'm not.
It is hard, but I mean, what do you think is harder, that game or the actual guitar?
Probably that game.
I love it. So you started playing the real guitar. How old were you?
I was like 10 or 11, one of those.
Okay. And what were the first real songs you were starting to play?
Well, everybody learns duh, 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 duh. So that was like the first riff, but I guess the first like song was like, I think American Boy.
God, what year was that out? Like 2008?
It had to be.
Yeah. I feel like it was around then. So you started producing for other artists. How did you get started with that? Like, how do you find artists or they find you, when you first start out like that? Because you were producing for some big artists. Like, seriously, man, like talk about who you were producing for and how those relationships came to happen.
Well, it all started with the internet.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my first opportunity, and they got me started, and I'm in that band, and I think through that showed me how to do it first off, and then like Mac Miller was the first person actually that I produced for, and those ideas, because Jet Fuel came way later, but I was making stuff with Mac when I was like a teen. I have ideas from like literally the first time I met him, and I was literally like 16. Yeah, I was 16. And they kind of just showed me, how to do it. And from there, after Ego Death and all that stuff, I would just kind of meet different artists and just be like, hey, if you ever need beats, I produce. And they're like, oh yeah. I was like, yeah, I produce for the internet. And then they're like, oh, and so I was just kind of a little bit of capitalizing on the moment, but sooner enough, I didn't have to say that anymore. But a lot of my first ideas came from Ego Death being such a thing for like artists. I think a lot of artists really, really loved that album, and people did too. But I think it really connected with a lot of artists that I wanted to work with at least. So I would just kind of say that liner, and they'd be like, "Oh, word! Like, get my number!" Like, da da da. And that's how it happened. And then it was a lot of different connects because there were like other producers that I worked with too, like DJ Dahi. That's how I got on Damn with Kendrick, because I was making stuff with Dahi, and then Ezra, I worked with from online. Like I'm very like I don't like middleman stuff. I like to hit people directly.
Yeah.
So I remember I hit Ezra on Twitter, and I've been a Vampire Weekend fan since I was a kid. Like would watch their shows on YouTube, and he replied, and I was like, oh my god.
Oh,
You know, and then we ended up meeting, and I worked on that album, and I'm Vampire Weekend's first feature they ever did.
What about like when it comes to, you know, doing your own music, what sides of yourself are you like most excited to share with the audience that maybe you could not have shared when you were doing things for other artists?
Just, you know, the energy, man, is different. It's different. What I do for myself is different for what I do for people. I kind of like just like collect all my experiences and then just apply it to, okay, how can I make this mine? And I think too, they could expect, you know, to see somebody who's playing the instrument and singing, you know, that's as hot as me, you know, that looks as good. So, so
and as humble as you.
yeah, exactly. It's humble. No, but I think, you know, yeah, it's cool to keep the band and live music thing alive, you know.
How many songs you got on your album?
10.
How did you get it down to 10? Because I am almost certain you had a ton of them, right?
250 or something.
Holy bro, really? I didn't think it'd be that many.
Yeah.
How do you get it down to 10?
I'm very feeling based. Like I really have to like love it for like a while. And then I'm like, okay, cool. This one, because I like to make things that like last. So the way that I do that is just I keep listening to it. I keep listening, and if it ever starts to be like, and then I'm like, no, I don't like it, and then I just scrap it. But these 10 felt really special to me, and they were being moved around here and there. Maybe I'll bring something else back, but I was very, very adamant on the number 10.
When you're picking out these songs, when you're making this music, do you picture the audience listening to it, and like you get like an image in your head of what they're doing while they hear your song and how it's making them feel? Do you picture that, or do you just write for yourself?
No, you know, I like to put myself in the audience seat, and maybe that's how I imagine it. I'm like, okay, if I was someone who was taking this in, like, how would I react? You know, so that's kind of how I like to do it. Is like I'd like to. It's like I'm playing these switching sides from like artist to audience, you know, because I think, you know, it's all like kind of the same. Like I'm an audience person to someone. So it's like to not lose sight or not lose track of like audience. So like I know how I take in music and like how I connect with music. So how can I apply that to my stuff, you know?
So with Bad Habit, like what are you picturing in your mind for the audience when that song plays?
That one, you know, there was no picture. It was just a feeling. And I was just like, this is so funny. Like when I was making it, I was just like, this is hilarious. I'm pretty sure like so many people can relate to something like this, right? And it was just kind of like a joke. Like it was just really fun. And I don't think about, you know, like being number one or being number 3 on the charts. Like those were not thoughts that came into my head when I was making this stuff at all. Cause, you know, I just don't think of that stuff. I just make the music. And now that I've done it, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, you know, this is possible. This is cool.
You're like, damn, I should have done this a long time ago. I like this quote in the charts.
Right. It's kind of fun. You know, it definitely gives me a little bit more pull.
So who inspired that song then? Who were you thinking about when you wrote it? Whose tongue were you thinking of biting?
So many people, man.
So many tongues, so little time.
Yo, that song, you know, I feel like I write so funny because I can write. It sounds like I'm writing about one person or one thing, but it's like from multiple scenarios, like that I'm like pulling from to write about this thing that sounds so singular. But it really comes from a whole bunch of places.
Well, thank you for it, man. Thank you for this gift of music. Thank you for, you know, the song of the summer and for doing something that doesn't sound like everything else. It's really refreshing to play your song, man. It really is.
I appreciate that, man. I thank you for spinning something so original, man. That's cool.
Before you roll, let's do 5 random questions. We usually ask just basically the same one for all the guests. So let's see what your answers are to these 5 random. questions. So what, number one, what is the last song you turned up really loud?
Well, I was DJing last night, so I played a whole bunch of songs. I think it was Bad Habit, funny enough.
Okay. Who's your biggest role model?
God.
Are you religious?
Or
just spiritual?
Spiritual, yeah.
If you weren't an artist, what would you be doing for a living?
I'd be dead.
You really mean that?
No, I'd probably be designing clothes.
Who was your first crush?
I feel like it was this girl named Cheyenne.
What grade was that?
This was like kindergarten. We kissed in the Caterpillar.
If you could spend one night or go to dinner with the fictional character of your choice, who would it be and why?
Pootie Tang. I would definitely get lunch with Pootie.
That's one of my favorite answers we've gotten so far for that question. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Kannon.
The OHP Uncut Podcast with Kannon.